We are rolling, and today we're here with Mr. James Russell, of course, noted community historian, Sperryville resident, lifelong. And we're going to talk with him today about a couple different things about Sperryville and some of the people and characters that he knew and he encountered in his life. The first person I'd like to talk with you about is John Jackson. Now, they recently commemorated a marker to John Jackson, the famous folk musician, off the road nearby here. Now, you had mentioned that you knew John Jackson growing up. Can you tell us a little about who he was and, what he looked like, his appearance, any kind of characteristics he had, any kind of funny stories you might have about him?
Certainly so. John Jackson and I were in elementary school together some years ago. John Jackson was about an average height of complexion, about my complexion. But the thing about Mr. Jackson was that he came from a musical family. His mother was a musician of sorts, his father, and as well as his two brothers. He has a brother that's living now who plays what is called a zither. You may have heard, some people may have heard of a zither, or they may not have. A zither is basically what we call an auto harp. But John Jackson had the good fortune to be discovered by Mr. Chuck Perdue of the University of Charlottesville of Virginia. And he took John Jackson under his wing, and in the course of the association, John Jackson went on to great heights. When I say great heights, because he became an ambassador of goodwill, along with a group that went overseas to France, Germany, and even in the Far East. So this was what I knew of John Jackson, that he was an honest, hard-working man. In fact, he was originally as a grave digger. That was his original work before his historic meeting with Mr. Chuck Perdue at a service station there in Fairfax. And Mr. Perdue had heard of John Jackson, so he asked him to play, and he did. And then that's the beginning of his whole journey with the music. John Jackson, and the thing about it is this: the people recognized it. There was a jazz society of Lower Southwest Virginia that undertook the task of installing markers and some commemoration for the persons who contribute to the music. Approximately a month ago, John Jackson was eulogized, and a marker was unveiled there in Woodville, Virginia, which is about 5 miles from here, in his honor. It spoke of his origin, his family, what he did, and so on. And it was well attended. It was one Saturday afternoon. Of course, John Jackson is deceased, as we know. John Jackson was certainly a person of such just a personality, always smiling, and just making you feel like you had been a companion or a known person for some time. There were quite a few dignitaries from the Rappahannock County there, Mr. McCarthy, named one, Mr. Schofield, and then there was his nephew who spoke about him, and he played a few songs on his guitar that John Jackson liked so well. And another thing, lastly, there was a young lady who had been adopted by John Jackson, Caucasian lady. But she said, called him Dad. And she said Dad had taught her so many songs on the guitar there. And she spoke about him. She had a few minutes to speak. And the nephew, as I say, he had made a few remarks. Mr. McCarthy and Mr. Perdue was also there, the gentleman who discovered John Jackson, and is also an author and a publisher of the University Press in Charlottesville. So Mr. Perdue was there and had remarks to make,
Okay.
and I spoke also
Okay.
a few remarks.
What words did you have to say?
John Jackson was a good companion, a friend, and a lifelong friend. What I say about John is this: from our elementary school days until the Christmas before, I believe he passed in February. It was in the first of the year, but as a good, warm friendship that had no detours. I think that says it. That just about says it. When you have a friend that doesn't make any changes in the friendship because of what have you, but he was a sincere person. He was a person that you like being around with, and on a number of occasions, he played at various functions here in the village, and was well attended there in Woodville. So the unveiling of that marker was done on this Saturday afternoon. Regret that I don't think of the date now, but it was an event that people liked, and all those that didn't have the opportunity to meet John or see him, if they were paused in route to Culpeper or Culpeper to Sperryville, they would see on the roadway 101 John Jackson.
Now, you mentioned that he played various events in the community. Can you remember a specific event that kind of stands out that he played, that something interesting might have happened at, or that a strange event that happened, or anything that comes out in your mind?
There were several events that he played. I guess one of the outstanding ones was when he played for the J&J Realty, which had a display at the intersection of 1001 and 600. This was a fall festival, which is an event that has been in vogue and a popular for quite some time. And John Jackson was seated on we had bales of hay. Mr. Atkins had bales of hay. John Jackson was there. But there were so many people that wanted to hear him play, and they came up with various requests. And I recall there was one called Some Old Rainy Day. Some Old Rainy Day was a dance number that was very popular with the older crowd years and years ago. And that seemed to ring a bell with so many people, particularly a lot of the persons who were 50 years or more, because they recall that number where everybody tried to dance, everybody tried to listen, everybody wanted to hear John Jackson play Some Old Rainy Day. And that is one of the outstanding events that I can recall of John Jackson.
Okay.
I don't think of anything else now other than there was a tragic story about his mother that was a victim of some of the roadside hoodlums. Mrs. Sutter Jackson, his mother, was en route from the store to her home on 231. And at that time, there was some of the local hoodlums who were driving a V8 Ford. And they slowed down and wanted Mrs. Jackson to get in the car with them. Of course, she didn't get in the car with them because who knows what motives they had. They were not interested in just giving her a ride. They were interested in whatever the evening offered. She refused. One of the men jumped out the car and struck her in the head with a monkey wrench. And then she lay on the side of the roadway, unconscious, for a period of time, till she was eventually picked up by some of the passersby who had an automobile, and she was taken to Culpeper. I believe she was taken to Culpeper Hospital. Anyway, she was taken to a doctor. That was one of the things that befell the family as far as some of the tragic things. But for the most part, it was a beautiful story. Poor people, not any elaborate showings, but friendly and famous.
Now, the story that you're telling about these hoodlums. Now, is this now were these hoodlums white? Were they black? Was this or was this kind of a race motivated event? Where did they try to was this during time of segregation or Jim Crow era? Or do you have any understanding of what the motivation was, or was it just unidentified hoodlums?
All right. This was happened during, I should have mentioned this before. This was during the 30s, and you can understand the mentality of the people at that time during the 30s. All right, black gal, black woman, or what have you, was just a choice of any kind of insult. And unfortunately, the two men that tried to pick Miss Jackson up were white. Nothing was ever done of it. She didn't remember what they looked like, and conveniently so, because whether anything would have been done about it is very doubtful. But that was one little incident that I always remember with the Jackson family.
Well, it's kind of sticking with that theme about some of this.
This was the experience of the 20s and the 30s. It was a mentality. It was such a racial thing. It was very. People don't understand, but at those times, it was very harsh, very harsh. The folks there regarded, as they do, or as they did during that time, all through the South, that the blacks were just something that could be used, however, beast of burden of entertainment, or whatever pleasure that the mind so took them down that path.
Now, we had visited your schoolhouse before, which had been moved, and it's a lovely little schoolhouse. Can you tell me what it was like going to school there? What are the sounds? Was there the school bell? Was there the chatting, the talking? What did it smell like? It had to have that wood, earthy smell about it. Just think back into your memory and try to describe in as much detail as you can for me what it was like being in that schoolhouse.
All right. Our school at that time, I started school, it was in 1928. And as far as the appearance, not too pleasant windowed affair, wood stove, no electricity, no running water, of course. It was located at Oven Top Road and 211, and unfortunately, it was just a makeshift affair. It was something that was squeezed in to give some degree of instructions to the black kids there. The smell of the building was, of course, of apples and of bodies. Let me tell you a little funny story about, there was one kid who came, first of all, let me tell you about the school year, and then we'll blend in all the rest of it. The school year began after for the major part of the kids, after the crops were harvested. There was no emphasis placed on attending the school before then, because it felt that the black kids, they didn't need any lengthy instructions or what have you. All they needed was the basic reading and writing, and to help with harvest the crops. So for the larger kids, after Christmas was the time that they attended school because the crops were laid by then. But before then, it was a very cramped affair. 30. In fact, I have a picture. I don't have a picture at hand now, but it was a very stunted affair. The play area that we had was probably the size of a postage stamp, not much larger than that. The only thing the kids could do on that was jump rope. That's the only space we had. However, there was a gentleman by the name of Left Brown who had a big field right across the way, and he showed no objection. He didn't object to the kids coming over there playing fox and hounds. This was what we did over there, called fox and hounds. One of the kids, boys, was selected. Those who could run fast was given about 20 or 50 paces ahead of a pack of hounds, which we maybe 10 or 12 boys, and we chased the fox across the hill. That was it. Now, something else that happened during that time was the fact that there was a road in construction going on at the time, and there was a quarry directly across from the school. So at the time that the quarry was used, there were, of course, blasting. They had times that of the blasting, some of the foremen or the men would come over to our school and inform the teachers to get the kids out of the school, close the blinds, go up on the hillside, and be away from the area because of the rocks that were hurled from the quarry at that time. And now you have to understand that this is during the 30s, a very primitive time of road building. The road building was done by convicts, black, ugly, surly looking, mean looking. I call them mean looking because they were. And they had, as far as for the removal and the corralling of the gravel, they used mules with what was called a drag. This was an apparatus that was so designed that it had a harness on for the mule, and it helped to corral the gravel. And the one thing that we kids enjoyed was going to the barrels where the tar was kept. We would chip off a bit of the tar and chew this tar. I don't know whether it could be done now. They have so many chemicals in it now. But we kids used to enjoy chipping off this tar and chewing it. That was the bubble gum of the day. Can you imagine jawbreakers? Perhaps jawbreakers, yes. But that's the two things that I can remember about the school: the size, the lack of facilities, and one thing about the water supply. To my right on the fireplace, you can't see it now, but there's a galvanized 10-quart pail and a dipper. In the mornings, 2 kids were dispatched about a quarter of a mile to a spring where we dipped water into the pail, brought it back to the school so it would be a source of our water supply. In the afternoon, 2 boys would have the likewise task, always alternate. Sometimes the girls in the morning, sometimes the boys in the afternoon. But that was the source of our water supply that we had at that time. There was one thing that were confronted with for a while. There was a vagrant in the neighborhood who, despite the fact that we had, say for the fall days and the winter days, had gathered kindling wood for our wood stove, we would prepare that in the evening. This vagrant, I won't mention his name, would come, pry the blinds off the window, go in, take a sack of apples that he had with him and just burn up all our wood that we had, wood for the evening. He would just use that on different occasions. So the occasion came that it was known exactly who was doing it. So a trap was set for him. What do they call it now? Not a snare, but it was a staged affair with the local sheriff. So when they waited sometime early in the morning, and when this gentleman came out the window of our school, that's when he was apprehended. He was given, I believe, a fine for that. But anyhow, the embarrassment, I guess, that he had to spend his evenings and nights in a black school as opposed to having a place to live, so embarrassed him, and he was not too well thought of. He had too many D's. As the saying goes, he had a rap sheet. A rap sheet that was ridiculous.
Now, you had mentioned that there was a boy in the school that you wanted to tell a story about, one of your classmates that you were recalling about. Can you recall what you were thinking about? Something about a smell, and then you said something about...
Oh, golly. Yes, I was. Yes, I was. Now they're speaking about, let me give him a name of John. I won't call his right name. Bless his soul, he's gone, but he does have some relatives still living. All right, let me tell you about John. John worked for the local farmer, and in the course of preparing the ground there for farming, he was hired, or rather instructed, and which he did, haul manure. Manure is fertilizer that is grateful and freely furnished by the farm animals. I don't have to go to all you know what manure is. So let me tell you what Johnny would do. Johnny would work probably some days with the manure spreading. Come to school. The teacher had to be very diplomatic and very patient with him, because at that time, Saturday night was a bath time. You didn't take a bath until Saturday night. That was always a bath night. But if you haul in manure by day, you need to take a bath at night, that very night. Johnny came, and I was teaching Miss Bertie Mae Stafford. Johnny, what you been doing? What you do yesterday? Hauling manure. He didn't say manure, he's calling manure. Well, Johnny, we generally change clothes, and we take that wooden tub, you have by the side of your house. Well, we just get in that and we soak ourselves, just wash, and then if we have any lilac water left, we do that. But please, Johnny, don't forget to use that wooden tub after you've finished your task of hauling manure. That was one little incident. And let's see, let me tell you another little funny one about Wingy. Wingy was a nickname for a young man, a young student by the name of George Curtis. And as I mentioned before, our recreation area was very limited, very much limited. So, but George Curtis, also known as Wingy, was a skilled dancer. He could dance. The kids would form a ring. We would always applaud, clap our hands. And Wingy would do his favorite dance called Falling Off the Log. That was some of the kids. And of course, at that time, there was a Charleston dance, a dance called the Charleston. There was a brother and sister act, Francis Andes and Richard Andes, her brother. They, in fact, won several local contests for the carnivals that used to come through the town. And they would dance, called this Charleston. Those two incidents, they're the funny ones. The other ones, as I say, stunted childhood, the unpleasantness. There were several of those, but I won't dwell on that now.
Now, you mentioned playing Fox and Hounds. Give me 1 second. I'm going to just do a little thing on this. Now, you mentioned Fox and Hounds, playing the game Fox and Hounds.
Yeah.
Now, what other things did you do when growing up to pass the time? And what things did adults do to pass the time? What do you remember? Did people listen to the radio? What kind of games did you play? What would you do for fun?
All right. Now, at that time, everyone loved baseball. Baseball is always a choice of recreational activity. There was a black enclave called the Major's Holler. Now, the Major's Holler was so favored with a flat area that the kids and the families on the weekends would gather and in the evenings have a baseball game or or whatever. That was what I called an oasis. It was an oasis because it was relief from being directed off the sidewalk by the whites and being away from the whites, who always would make us a target of stones, missiles, insults, whatever. This was the recreation that we had at the place called the Major's Holler. There was one other that we looked forward to, was the farm grounds of Will Jackson. Will Jackson was a local black farmer that had the good fortune to own almost 100 or more acres. He had an orchard, grazing land, had cattle, and above all, he was a deacon of our church, and hence the folks of the church used to look forward to a seasonal affair, probably in the spring, fall, and what have you time, to go to Will Jackson's farm, where they would have horseshoe pitching, jumping the rail fence, baseball, and in the evenings, as it did at the Major's Holler, there was a platform that was set up with lanterns hung around the side, and then, of course, there was an evening dance. There was, which was the music. And then, incidentally, this music was furnished by John Jackson's brother, whose name was Henry, and Dick Jackson. They were also musicians. So you had those musicians. You had a Jew's harp. You had a banjo, and there was one guy who had some degree of affliction about his nose. We called him No Nose because his nose was very abbreviated. But No Nose used to play the Jew's harp. So we had had No Nose, the banjo, the guitar, and a good time for all.
Sounds like it was quite a
that
lively experience.
Now this predated. Now there was several beer gardens that were built around 35. That came into being around 35, but that's another story on that.
No, the Hopewell Baptist Church. Now I know that Sister Caroline was instrumental in the founding of this church. Can you recall what the services were like? You know, as a child, where would you be in the crowd? What kind of songs did you sing? What was the experience like? You know, did you go to any weddings there? What were weddings like? What was it like being James Russell in this church?
The experience was very warm and a very moving experience in that we were instructed by our parents to be attentive, to be quiet, and there was one section of the church, what we call the Amen Corner. The Amen Corner. Amen Corner consisted of the elder ladies of the church, say Aunt, now to name a few, Aunt Jenny, Aunt Lucy, Aunt Rhett, Aunt Ella, as such. And these ladies were very vocal in their listening to the pastor. And of course, at that time, no electricity, no running water. We had lamps that were on either side of the pulpit, and of course, we certainly did listen to the pastor, listen to what his message was. The kids were instructed, as I say, to be very attentive. It was a warm feeling. I'll always remember that because it was a very warm affair, a family affair. Let's say a family affair, where all families knew each other. And then if one of the kids or whatever was still down playing ball or playing what have you, they were immediately called, and we attended church together.
Okay.
Hopewell Baptist Church. This was the result of the consequence of a meeting in 1874 by Sister Caroline Terry and 11 other members of the Reynolds Memorial Church who attended church then. At that time, they had no black church. But it was a meeting of these 12 members who were former slaves who decided they wanted their own church. And as a result of meeting, the first meeting was held, of course, as our research has shown, at Sister Caroline's house. Out of that was born Hopewell Baptist Church.
You mentioned Sister Caroline. Can you recall any childhood stories about Sister Caroline? You know, her teasing you playing with her, fetching something for her pipe, or running to the store for her? Or there's certain things she used to call you used to call her. Any kind of stories you'd like to tell?
But one story, I used to go to the store for her and buy Granger tobacco, Prince Albert, George Washington, Bull Durham. Those were the things the items that she used to have me go to the store and buy. And I can recall so many times that said, "There's my boy, there's James." I had a nickname, so James Jeeves. So then she would call and thank me, and always she would have a few pennies or something to give me for my going to the store for. But her admonishment was this: "You wait right here. I'll get you something." She would never let us know where she kept those pennies. Not that we would attempt to save any of her savings, but those were the things. And another thing, she said, "I had a good grade of hair, but it need cultivating." I think it need combing. Need to be combed. That was what she spoke about that. That was what I remember. She was a short, average height woman, my complexion, dark, and she was kind of feisty, short-fused, and I recall my great-uncle who came in one day and he was hungry and he shook his fist at Caroline. He said, "Caroline, next time I come here, I want my dinner on time. I'm hungry." And I remember Sister Caroline said, "Yeah, I tell you what, big boy, it may be in mind, but it'll never be in time." That was her attitude there. And she had the eldest son was named Theodore Terry. He used to imbibe quite a bit, but he would never get drunk, according to his evaluation of his drinking, he could be a just a little high, but never drunk, even though he had two people on either side to help him home. That's the stories I can recall about him. Oh, and here's the thing: Theodore, being the eldest of Caroline's three boys, sought to reprimand and chastise, and then actually whip, get a little switch there and whip the boys when they were out of line. So they, when I say they, this was Tony and Watha, the two other children of Sister Caroline, not of the plantation variety, but two of them that were picked up locally. Let's put it like that. They were local grown. And they would come and, if they were grown men, as I recall, there was what was called a crosscut saw. A crosscut saw is a saw that's operated by two men. One pushes, the other pulls. But there's never a pushing, and it's not to be a pushing affair because then you are the rhythm on that. So Tony, or rather Watha, and Theodore would come to Sister Caroline's house, and on my grandmother's house, they would saw wood, but they would never speak to each other. There was no conversation. One would look at the watch, some gruddle remarks, put the watch back in the pocket. Then they'd lay the saw down. Watha would go on home. Theodore would take the saw in the house. Next morning, Theodore would bring the saw out to the wood pile, sat there by the wood. Then Watha would come. Both men would resume their task of the evening before. Conversation was nil. They didn't. The only time they responded to conversation was when my grandmother came out and called them for lunch, for dinner. But I always thought that was rather odd. They carried a little grudge like that, not even speaking to each other, two brothers. That was the story of Theodore and Watha.
Now, you mentioned about the cooking, like, how, I wanted my meal made on time. What were the kind of things you ate in your house? What were the kind of things people ate in the community? What kind of things did you drink? I mean, what was a normal meal like in your home? And what was an exceptional meal, like a special meal like? What did it taste like? What was it made out of? What did the house smell like when she was cooking?
We had an abundance of pork, as I recall, string beans. Oh, I can recall the delicious iron pot of string beans with potatoes floating on top and a generous portion of pork. Now, my grandmother did the cooking, and her house was some distance from Caroline's house. Caroline didn't do much cooking at that time. It was just a warmed over leftovers. But I recall that vegetables, mashed potatoes, and there were sweet potatoes, and a portion of, they always had gravy, and hot biscuits. They were very tasty, very tasty. So then, what did you get? Now, as far as the aroma, the smell of the house, you had string beans, the pork, the normal hot biscuits, and, of course, my great-grandmother always had some old roots or something, calamus roots. That was a root that was supposed to take away the pain, and it was a medicinal affair that she had. So it's in you what you have. You had a mixture of a delicious dinner aroma and of medicine. So those two you combine, but generally your hunger, you just forgot about the other medicine smell. You thought about the string beans. And on one occasion, have you ever heard of a string sandwich? Nope. Well, I have. Because I had my great-grandmother fix me a string bean sandwich. They were so tasty, so good. And I was going back outside to continue play. I said, Grandma, fix me up a little sandwich. Put some of those nice string beans on it. And that's what I had, a string bean sandwich. Amazing, amazing. That was a portion of the growing up experience.
Well, let's take a little break here and get some water. I'm going to change the tapes, and then we'll start again. I still have a couple more questions to ask you, and then we can start back up. So let's take a little break.